Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls and friends beyond the binary. It's time for the podcaster. When I think of the word bookish, I want to say bookwish, which I think should be a new greeting that you say to someone, another reader or potential reader. Like, it almost indicates good book wish. I have good book wishes for you. As in, I hope you come across or are reading a book that brings you joy or whatever you're looking for. Not that I'm selling book witches, which would not be appetite, like sandwiches made from books. Or, I could have a cafe, book witch, a cafe with a book. Anyway, but really what I have is a sleep podcast that goes off topic. It doesn't even, but I may, it doesn't make always much sense because it's time for Sleep With Me podcast to put you to sleep. And these are the ways we're able to keep the podcast free for everybody. Or when your hand hits the fridge tomorrow, you can find them at sleepwithmepodcast.com/sponsors. Thanks. Hey, everybody, it's Scoots, and I know this is not an easy time for anybody. This episode was recorded a few months ago, so I just wanted to let you know that and to let you know to check our show notes for resources, because the podcast is here to put you to sleep, but there's more resources in our show notes if you're needing more. Please use those links. You're really important to me, so please use them. Thank you so much. Hey, everybody, it's Scoots, and, I've been trying to figure out how to talk about this. I mean, what everything that's going on right now, and everybody's at a different part of your journey. I want to let you know that I have a current plan, and I'm staying fluid here, but the podcast is going to be continuing to come out on Sundays and Wednesdays as usual. And those of you that listen on the Patreon feed, all those releases are going to be coming out as usual. So the podcast is going to be here for you. If you need it during the day for a break, it's going to be here for you. And this is a challenging time for everyone. And so if you're in a position to do so, and you're a regular listener, if you could think about supporting the podcast in one of few ways I'm going to mention very quickly here. If you can afford to support the show at $5, $10, or $20 a month on Patreon, that is a huge help so that the podcast will be here. And basically, it's just like a membership. You're paying for the value you get out of the podcast. It's just an optional thing so that the podcast can be free for anybody that needs it right now. So almost like you're paying for your membership and thousands of other people's membership, which just $5, $10, or $20 a month. But that's only if you can afford that on a monthly basis. Another way to support the show is to buy our merch or support our sponsors, which you could do through our website, sleepwithmepodcast.com. You'll see our sponsors. You'll see a link to our merch store. Those are huge ways to support the show. The other way is just to let people know about it, which a lot of you are doing, and I really appreciate it. But I want you to know the podcast is going to be here for you. And if you can't support the show's going to be here to support you. Don't worry about it, okay? Thank you so much. All right, it's time for the Sleepy Supporter Zone, and I want to thank Inga and Topher, who both signed up with Grove, shared with me some pictures of the gift sets they got from Grove for signing up and making their first order. The Sleepy Supporter Zone is the part of the show where I celebrate the people who supported the sponsors and help us keep the show free, allies of the free podcast. I start the show on an upbeat note because I get to keep this podcast here for you whenever you need it, twice a week, because of people like Inga and Topher for supporting Grove. Thank you so much. Seriously, if you support them, let me know what came in your box so I can compare it with what I ordered or what I'm putting in on my next order. Or if you support another sponsor, tag them, tag me. Let them know you appreciate them supporting the show, and I can try to thank you in the Sleepy Supporter Zone, which is now over. Oh, Mystery Bard, I love saying for the love of Barbara Budd, but as it happens, you do have a new podcast called As It Happens, and you help out in the show. Who else does?
Chris Posty Poster Song sounds like an earful. Wrote the theme song. Carl W. the Legend. Also edits episode. Kenny, Scotty, and Jennifer. Eric and the team at Astound are on the website. I am the Mystery Bard. I do the lullabies. I'm making a podcast. Writing songs. It's called As It Happens. Song a day. And you can find it. Just search for it. You see the kindness shine straight on through when the listeners form their own Facebook group. Keith, Stacy, Sarah, Julie, and Jennifer. These Scooter on Patreon. Buy the merch and support the sponsors. You can find anything you want at sleepwithmepodcast.com. And we're so proud that we could dance to be part of Nine Veil Presents. So now on with the show.
Thanks, Mystery Bard. I put a link to your podcast in our show notes, and I'm at Dear Scooter on Twitter and Instagram. Hey, what do you say we slow it down and get on with the show? Hey, are you up all night tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep? Well, welcome. This is Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do it with a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights, and press play. I'm going to do the rest. What I'm going to attempt to do is create a safe place where you can set aside whatever's keeping you awake. So whether it's thoughts, things on your mind that you're thinking about, feelings, emotions coming up while I talk, or remnants of ones still with you from the day, or maybe related to tomorrow. Physical sensations of any kind, but if you're dealing with something like that, I'm here to take your mind off of all of those and many more. Changes in schedule or routine, or you're traveling, or someone else, whatever it is. I'm here to help. And what I'm going to do, one, I'm going to send my voice across the deep dark night. I'm already doing that. I'm going to use lulling, soothing, creaky dulcet tones, pointless meanders, superfluous tangents, metaphors that, you see, is that like things resembling metaphors? Is that a metaphor? I'm not even sure, I think I guess I'd have to say something that resembles a metaphor, something that's like a metaphor or as a metaphor. Like a combination of words. Anyway, jokes that are like things that are like jokes, and the attempt to take a partial joke and a partial metaphor and present it as not something complete, but turning into incomplete work. But that's what I also do. But really, I'm here to keep you company as you fall asleep. And now, if you're new, a couple things to know off the bat. This podcast is very different. So if it's unexpected, you might be having an unexpected reaction to it, because that's perfectly normal. You might be skeptical. That's or even on the strong side, skeptical, because, obviously you would be. It's a podcast to put you to sleep. But what are you up to? What are you doing? All good questions. And I guess the best answer, I don't really have a good answer. The best answer I have is kind of see how it goes. This podcast does not work for everybody. But of the many, 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 many users or listeners that I have, most of them say, hey, it took 2 or 3 tries. And then I realized that this is that the podcast, I had a non-realization about the podcast is how I realized it. So that's one thing is if you're like, and if you're new, welcome. Try to welcome you by just being honest. Other thing that throws new listeners off sometimes, and if you become a regular listener, you'll kind of adjust to how you like to consume the show, is the structure. Show starts off with a few minutes of business. That's how we keep the podcast free and not behind a paywall. Then there's an intro, which is another thing that can throw you off. It's like a 12 to 20 minute. I honestly have I have a general idea what a soliloquy is, but that word just popped in my head. So I don't know if it is a soliloquy. It is a monotone monologue where I just kind of talk about what the podcast is for 12 to 20 minutes. I mean, that's what my attempt to do. That would take 2 minutes. You're right about that. But then as I try to explain things, I get distracted and I go off topic. But there's a dual purpose in that. It gives you time to wind down, to get ready for bed. It establishes a kind of, just like I was talking about at the top of the show, like if I did have a cafe, if I proposed having a cafe called the Cozy Cafe, I probably have, because I remember I talked about that dog, Cozy. This was years ago. And tonight I thought we'd have a cafe called the Book Witch, Now I just thought of, I said, how did I not think of another, that could have another meaning? Oh boy, I guess this is what tonight's episode has to be about, the Book Witch, because I was thinking about the Book Witch Cafe, but now I'm picturing some wonderful, wizened character, like the Book Witch. It sounds like we're going, well, later, when you're fully literate, you'll be able to go meet. And I say, well, I don't think I'll ever be fully literate. Okay, then when you're ready, I'll send you into the stacks to meet with the Book Witch. I'd say, okay, well, that sounds really like it's the Book Witch. Is it the Book Witch or no? It's the the Book Witch. Yeah. Would you like a Book Witch while you wait and think about if you're ready to go see her? Sure, because I was actually originally I was trying to introduce the podcast to new listeners, and then I realized I wanted to start an imaginary cafe called the Book Witch Cafe, because I mentioned at the top of the show. Maybe I should just create a sandwich called the Book Witch. What would be in it? Literature. I don't know, because I'm not that... alphabet soup, is that alphabet soup between two pieces of bread? No, we call those tomes here. It's between two tomes, we call them covers. I just changed that chalkboard. No, change it from tomes to covers. Is that alphabet soup? Well, I don't know if technically we could say that because another company may own that, but we do put a collection of, we also have a savory and a sweet version. Are those alphabets? I don't know. They're letters, cereal letters with a sweet frosting. Yeah, between two covers. Those are tarts that pop out of the toaster. And yeah, for our lunch edition, we call it, we seal it up in one of those sandwich sealers, you know. You can get them at garage sales. That's maybe the only place you can. Because if you pay more than $1 for it, you feel like, oh boy. But yeah, it's two, okay, yeah, it is 2 pieces of bread with alphabet soup in there. You're right, you got me. Sorry, I got to get, because the only reason I admitted it is because I was got to get back to the new listeners. So the intro is a way to wind down, to take your mind off stuff and ease you into bedtime. And that's why I guess it takes a little bit of getting used to if you're new. But then as a regular listener, it'll be somewhat familiar. You say, okay, I'll start the podcast. Some listeners do it before they get in bed. Some get in bed. You'll see what works and say, I'm just listening to Scoots, try to get to a point, never get there. And then I guess make an episode about the Book Witch. Actually, but tonight's episode, I think I'll have to do that one day because tonight's episode's about books and all. I mean, that's why I had books on the brain. So we'll have to return to the Book Witch because this actually intro is for an episode I made about books I've read. So yeah, that's what I'll talk about next. So it'll be the intro, some business. Then I'll talk about a bunch of books I read from one author and my kind of personal journey with that author, and to speculate on if I can remember anything about any of the books, which is probably at least 10 to 12 mass market paperbacks from this one author. Maybe I'll read one of those books, and have a part 2 at some point down the road. So, and then there's some thank yous at the end. So that's the structure of the show. There's about 2% of listeners that skip the intro. And then there's a percentage of patrons that kind of listen all night and they might listen to story only episodes and stuff like that. But for a lot of people, the intro is a way to ease you into bed. And then I start talking about this author and you're in bed, ideally cozy, distracted, here with your boyfriend. I'm here to keep you company. And this is a podcast you clearly probably figured out you don't really need to listen to. There's no pressure to kind of make any sense of what I'm talking about. or to remember it or anything. But there's also no pressure to fall asleep. I'm going to be here for about an hour to keep you company as you drift off, so you don't have to worry. And if you can't sleep, if you're in a position where you can't sleep, or it's going to be a few hours for whatever reason, or you're waking up in the middle of the night, I'm going to be here till the very end to keep you company. I take those of you asleep and awake. You're all really important to me. So that's the structure of the show. Those are the kind of rules around the show. See how it goes. My goal is to take the seriousness out of bedtime and bobble it and then drop it all, and then try to pick it back up. I'm the kind of person who builds, businesses around, well, I don't really build a business, but I thought of one, a cafe that serves. And here's the thing. This isn't a terrible idea. Maybe it is. Putting alphabet soup in its raw form, which is never raw, actually, in just putting it in bed. Don't put alphabet soup in bed, please. I misspoke there. Putting in a bed of bread is not a great idea, just because my theory in my brain, it is a bit congealed, that soup. It's not in a watery sauce, but it is in a sauce. So I would say you may have to reduce it. Or, I don't know, what if you put here's an idea. This is just a guess, and maybe some actual cooks could maybe start it on the stovetop. Maybe a quarter or an eighth of a teaspoon of corn starch mixed with triple that in water. That might work. I'd say an eighth just to see if we don't throw the taste off. So 1/8 teaspoon of maybe a quarter. Let's try it with a quarter, though. A quarter teaspoon of water, quarter teaspoons of cold water. Mix that in a bowl or jar, and then put it in your warming alphabet soup. Then ideally you'd have like an alphabet gravy type soup. Then this is what we do at the, what did I call the cafe? The bookwish. That's how you make bookwich. Maybe, because I've never made one except in my, in my imagination. It doesn't seem that great. Maybe, I don't know. So let's just do it in our imagination only. It's like making a mud pie. A bookwich is not made for regular consumption. It's a kind of thing that dreams are made of dreams, not dreams are made of bookwitches. But dreams are made of bookwishes, among other things. I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to think of other wordplay with bookwitch. I think the bookwitch will probably make me choose a bookwitch, as in which book, but I'm not positive about that because I haven't reached the age of maturity, which the part of my brain says in quotes. So, you mean physically mature or emotionally mature? Because I don't know which one's going to come first. So where was I? So this is a podcast to take your mind off stuff and put you to sleep, believe it or not. I'm your bore bud, your bore friend, your bore bae, your bore cuz. I send you book wishes. I won't send any book wishes because they'll definitely get returned. And I'm not good at, I'm good at sending wishes, but I'm not good at actually sending things. So I'm glad you're here. I really, really appreciate you coming by and checking out this show. Give it a few tries because I really hope it helps you fall asleep, but it does take a few tries for most people. If you discover or you've already discovered the podcast is not for you, you could go to sleepwithmepodcast.com/no thank you to check out other shows. But I'm glad you're here. I work very hard. I yearn and I strive because I really want to help you fall asleep. And here's a few ways we're able to keep this podcast free for everybody. Hey, before we get to the story here, I just wanted to take this opportunity to let you know the podcast is going to be here for you Sundays and Wednesdays as it is in regular times. I just want to give you some peace of mind that it's going to be here. If you're in a position where you could support us, that would be huge. I know not everybody's in that position right now, but if you are in that position, if you could think about becoming a patron at sleepwithmepodcast.com/patron, it's more in the show $5, $10, or $20 a month. That's a huge help to support the value you get out of Sleep With Me and a lot of other listeners get out of the free podcast. There are pretty amazing bonuses at the $5, $10, and $20 level, just to, as a little teaser. You could also think about buying some merch or supporting our sponsors. You could do that through our website, sleepwithmepodcast.com, or you'll see the links for this week's sponsors in our show notes. And then let me know about it. Let them know about it so I can thank you on the Sleepy Supporter Zone. You could also just share about the podcast in your day-to-day life or online, just when it comes up in conversation. Those are huge ways to support the show, but I want to let you know the podcast is going to be here to support your sleep. If you're in a place you could support it back, that's fine. If not, no big deal. I totally understand. The podcast is going to be here for you. All right, and let's get on with the show. All right, hey, everybody. This is a new, some listeners like really boring content. Some listeners like content with a little bit of imagination. And some listeners like the stuff with the personal touch or purple touch. I wish I had the purple touch. If there was the story of King Scooter, it'd be the king with the purple touch. But actually, that was Prince, so I can't really. So Prince was the one with the purple touch. But where was I? So I had this idea for a new, occasional, trending style. I guess, kind of trending style episode with a little personal touch to it. I don't think this is quite the right title, but I think Did I Read It or something. I think Letterman once, David Letterman, who some people might not be familiar with, but David Letterman did Will It Float once upon a time. But this is Did I Read It, which I guess was similar to Tale of the Tape, but Did I Read It? But I thought I'd do it in a way, and I guess wondering where I came up with this idea. So we'll unpack that. We'll talk about the first author we're going to be featuring, which will be very unexpected to most of you. And I'll talk about that. So let's get started. So I don't know how I thought it. So I know I thought of this recently because I was walking the dog and I was thinking about this author. Walking Koa. Sorry, excuse me. She corrected me. She said, the dog? And I said, no, the dog, underlined with quotes. And then she sighed. So, okay. So I was thinking about this. Something happened. My brain thought of something. Then I walked the dog. Then I was thinking again about the thing I'd been thinking about, which in this case was an author in a book and saying, I kind of barely remember that book. Then I said, I wonder, I had thought about this before in some way because it's kind of like a part of my childhood or my teen years. Oh boy. At least people, you could wake up tomorrow or in the community around the show, say, wow, boy, did you hear about Scoots talking about his teen years last night? It really was a snoozer. Holy cow. I thought it was going to be revelatory. And it was. It just underscored, why we appreciate that he makes the Sleep Podcast. I'm pretty sure it was my teen years. It might have even been in my 20s. Now that I'm thinking about it. Not 100% sure on that. But so, I don't know how much time we'll have for this author now that I'm trying to unpack all this. So I thought it'd be and this might be a two-parter, possibly, though I just started a book. So I wonder if this author is even in the in the library for ebooks. I know you could probably purchase it. Again, I'm not trying to throw any shade at either. I'm just trying to buy time for my brain to remember what made me think of this author. The author has a few blockbuster movies, none that have come out in the last, I think the last movie probably came out 4 or 5 years ago. Maybe there's one more coming. I don't know. Really good movies, or pretty good, depending on what you like. I don't know. Maybe this is the only thing I can think of, and this is really a stretch, and I'm not even positive. And here's a question. Who doesn't love John Krasinski, right? Or is it Josh? I do. And Yeah, so I know on Amazon Prime, which I think is what I used to watch a couple shows for the podcast, there's been ads for his Tom Clancy show, Jack Ryan. And this isn't about Tom Clancy, though, so spoiler. And I said, okay, one day I'd like to watch that show. And I actually know somebody that's a big Clancy fan. So I said, have you watched that? Here's a strange code at all that is that. So I was visiting a family recently for a couple nights. And one night I didn't realize my dad was a big Jack Ryan fan, and season 2 had just started. Talk about something somebody should be paying. Hey, Bezos, send me a check for this, all right? So I watched a couple episodes. I did enjoy it, like a great cast, as I said, and my dad really likes it. So my mom slept through it, but I think she'll probably watch them again because he was talking to her, even though she was asleep, about everything. It was like watching it. I don't know if people watch TV very often with their parents, and I don't want to make generalizations, but it was a bit like watching it with like a DVD, whatever, the second. So there was the main audio, and then there was my dad's commentary, which was more expository or revelatory or what is that? RFQ, request for RFI, request for information from my mom who was sleeping, saying, okay, wait, is that? And I said, like, and actually it was an unspoiler because when it first started the episode, it was season 2, episode 2. And he tried to fill me in on everything. Yeah, which probably and then the person they thought was up to no good, actually, I'm pretty sure that person was not. So that actually added more tension for me in a good way. And then I said, well, this character's somewhat likable. I'm surprised and then I said, I'm confused at what that character's up to if they're up to no good. If you're a fan of The Wire, you'll be happy with some of the casting. There's also a character that always reminds, like an actor. Unfortunately, I don't remember the gentleman's name, but he always reminds me of one of my friend's dads that when I first met them, I wasn't too sure about them because they coach sports. And then I came around on them, but never 100%. That's like Jack Ryan's, one of his bosses. You say, well, I don't like you and trust you, and I kind of do, like a magnetism, and at the same time, saying, huh, so, and he's got a great voice. So where was I? So that has nothing to do with that. So that may have been what triggered me. I'm trying to think of what else it could have been that triggered. It didn't trigger me. I mean, that guy, that good dude does a little bit. But that is said, huh. Then I was walking the dog, and then I thought about this author. Maybe it was just when I had a list of ideas for the podcast. I don't know. But I thought of this author that I read almost every book of theirs. It could have been also that another author, I guess this was more it, that I've read a lot of another author. In the last 2 years, I've read a lot of books by one author. And I think I read 3 out of the last, not now. I've read other books since then. But at the time I thought of this idea, out of the last 4 books I read, 3 were by the same author. And I started to kind of see the archetypes of that author's writing, which you would only notice if you've read a lot of those books in a row, where you say, okay, I still enjoy this, but I kind of see, oh, okay, this is a theme that, I mean, probably the same for people who listen to the podcast, right? And I guess that was it. So sorry about that, John and Jack. John and Jack. John and Jack, is that the same name too, huh? Also very tall. John Krasinski is very tall. Even my dad during his commentary was commenting on how much taller he is than all the other characters. So it turns out Jack Ryan's tall too. Also, Jack Ryan's been portrayed by many people. Alec Baldwin, John Krasinski, or Josh. I should know that because there was one time I was listening to a podcast when Juno came out, and he was talking, never mind, now I'm never going to remember any of this, Jason Bateman, actually. He was talking about Jason Bateman, going to Jason Bateman's house, and Jason Bateman giving him a hard time because he had ankle socks on. I mean, as a friend, like that Jason Bateman's so friendly and gregarious. Oh, it's gregarious. Thanks, Jason. Glad you're here to keep an eye on my, but that, so anyway, I was thinking of this author. So maybe that was it. I'd read all these other books recently, and I started to see some patterns emerging with this one author, and it reminded me of the first time this happened to me that I know of was when I undertook reading, and actually this was when you had to buy books in the bookstore, and this author was not all their books were, now you might see them in a used bookstore, but at the time, I think they'd just done a reprint of all of their books in mass market paperback. Also, this was in the 90s, but the books I think were all a very 80s and 90s author, Robert Ludlum. And at some point in the 90s, I guess it was like, I decided I was going to try to read all of Robert Ludlum's books that were currently out because I enjoyed one or two, I enjoyed them. And then I read them to where I was I read too many in a row. Must have been in the night, maybe it was in because it was also I was reading a lot of them, when I was working. I'd be on a break or something or waiting for somebody, and I would read I'd just keep a book, especially a mass market paperback you could keep with you at all times. And I did really enjoy them. And so I was going to tell you a little bit more about Robert Ludlum. I did do a basic vetting because I said, what if this guy, I don't know, like I said, I haven't heard anything about him because he passed away, maybe 15, 20 years ago. But I did say, what if, he's not the greatest guy or something. But he seems like he was, so I'll do a little bit of it. I definitely didn't read all his books. And I'll talk about him. Then I'll talk about my first Ludlum experience, holy mackerel. And then maybe run through, with the remaining time, I'll make a proposal and then I'll run through some other books and see. I'm hoping I could just go by go to the cover art too. But this is from Wikipedia. Robert Ludlum, it's spelled Ludlum, 1927 to 2001. Now he's up there, having adventures in the sky. Author of 27 thriller novels. And then we'll talk about the most famous ones in a second. But the number of copies of his books in print is somewhere between 300 million and 500 million. 33 languages. It's been published in 40 countries. Also written under the pseudonyms Jonathan Ryder and Michael Shepard. He's born in New York and lived also in Naples. Went to Wesleyan. Let's see, New York City. His maternal grandparents were English. Got a BA in drama. Set one of his novels at the fictional Carlisle University, which was like Wesleyan. He was a Marine and a theater actor and producer. He did shows in Fort Lee, New Jersey, Playhouse on the Mall at Bergen Mall in Paramus, New Jersey. And that might have helped his understanding of energy, escapism, and action that the public wanted in novels. He once said, I equate suspense and good theater in a similar way. I guess I'm theatrical. Many of his novels have been made into films and miniseries, which I don't think I've seen any of them except for one. Yeah, miniseries. Yep. Although storylines depart significantly from source material. During the 70s, lived in Leona, New Jersey, where he spent hours a day writing. Let's see. So let's see when he wrote his first book. So 1927. Let's see when his first book was published. 77. So again, a perfect example of the falseness of you can't have a third act. Now, writing analysis and criticism, this is according to Wikipedia, though, they're typically like heroic novels, what do you call that, with an Uber, whatever they call that, Uber type. And I think this is where, after reading a bunch in a row, I kind of fell out of, maybe, I don't know, I don't remember, like, I just had too much, like, much like my relationship with, like, sweets and stuff, where I say, did I tell you, I don't think, like this, I'm recording this before the holidays, 2019, and I never thought I'd say this, but I don't think I can drink any eggnog this year. I had too much of it the last 2 years or 3 years. So much like, so anyway, again, like going against, this is very like Cold War and post-Cold War. And I think he was one of the people that was able to make that jump to like say, well, what fictional device, can we use it to replicate the power of the Cold War espionage to create thrillers? Like what other kind of like super baddies can we make? So basically, yeah, that's it. Oh, that's the filmography. Interesting. Oh, so that wasn't when his first book was published. That was when the first book was made into a movie. It was when he was 50. So I don't know. We'll have to find his bibliography. It's supposed to be on 3. Oh, yeah. So I got to click on it. That's why. Oh, but it was 1971. And I think, yeah, so he was still like in his 40s. So, yeah, 27 plus to 71 is 50 years would be 77. 40 years would be 67. So 44. Yeah, and looks like he put out a book almost every year. A couple of years there was a little bit more time between them, and I think now he's kind of a brand, which we know. Well, I know because I like as a librarian when I was working in a library, there was a lot of requests, especially for his newer books. Based on his characters under the Ludlum brand. It looks like, yeah, even, he wrote a couple, co-wrote a couple books, and then, in the 2000, the aughts, and then became a brand with other people writing, under his thing, which is pretty common now. And this is interesting because there's a lot. I didn't realize how extended his universe had become. So that's interesting. So I guess the first Ludlum book I read was definitely probably something my dad had read and left lying around in the summer. Wow. So it had to be. It was after 1990. So it wasn't like some point after 1990 because it came out in 1990. And actually, I'm seeing a bunch of them that I read. I see another one my dad had probably in, one he had in paperback and one he had in, so I could see the first 3 to 5 books I read. But I'm almost positive the first book I read was, well, now I'm confused, because I said, well, it could have been this other book, but I'm pretty sure the first one I read was a book called The Bourne Ultimatum, which was a movie, a series of 3 films with Matt Damon, right? And but the book is not very, and it was the third book in the Jason Bourne series, but it was the first book I read, which you don't necessarily, that's the cool thing about these books, I don't know. So I definitely read this one first or second or third, but it's the first one I always remember because I only remember the end of the book for the most part. And so the character is similar to Matt Damon's character, but this was set in the 90s, so it's a much different setting than the films. But like an ultra able hero with nearly superhuman abilities, even though he's supposed to be human. And Jason Bourne had like a sworn enemy that I don't think is in the movies, Carlos the Jackal. Which became, I think, like almost like a meme back in the 90s. I'm not sure if it was actually a real thing too, or maybe I don't remember. But I remember in this third book, what was cool was, and I'll have to reread that one. Like Jason Bourne was somebody that much like other heroes, even superheroes, was like, we're gonna make you into like how do I explain this in a sleepy context? Someone discovers this person has like aptitude for heroism, and they say, "Oh, okay, well, we'll do like we're gonna take your memory and make it a little bit hazy to give you ultimate training to be the ultimate hero." So there's usually like they don't have a lot of memories, or they're trying to like one part of their character arc is like trying to connect with who they thought they were, or who they originally loved, or reviving their fragmented memories. And also then the A stories a lot of times like a world stakes, so something's like the world balance or something is at stake, but also their human balance is at stake. And I think in the Bourne Ultimatum, it was the ultimate, like, Jason Bourne adventure. I think it might have been supposed to be the last one. And so in this story, the only thing I really remember, so it's like, do I remember this book? I remember reading it and saying, wow, this is cool. And the coolest part was the set piece at the end. So I think in 1990, my history's horrible, but I'll assume that was like during, as things were changing, the end of the Cold War or the slow wind down after the Cold War. So so it's written with still some Cold War aesthetic, and so set piece at the end, it was like, I think it was like Carlos the Jackal and the KGB were working together. And Jason, probably they had some personal stake for Jason Bourne, to say, well, you just like let us take over the world or else we'll use this personal stake against you. But he ends at this KGB training facility, which was kind of like unbelievably cool to me, and like just imagining it, because it was like set up like it was huge, and it was like all these different towns. It might even had a fake theme park where you could train, I think, to be like undercover. I don't know if this happens in the Americans. I'll have to watch. That's on my list of things to watch. But so, and that's basically the book. They end up ruining the whole place as they go after one another. Oh, whoops, I clicked on the wrong book, even though I remember that one too. So this one, the Bourne Ultimatum, came out in 1990. And I think this is a version, the first edition. I don't think I read the first edition, though, because it looks kind of familiar, but only because I wonder if there's other editions. There's two. Oh, yeah, maybe there's a paperback. This must be the hardback version. So I'm going to open up two different things here. Okay, I think I found I wonder if they re-released the book like with the plot from the Jason Bourne movie, because the plots are nothing alike as far as I know. Looks like there's actually a lot of older ones too, or maybe they were released in other worlds. But this one Let's see, what is it? Bantam Books is the one I read, the mass market paperback. And Ludlum, I assume, was like a really big deal because his name is like 10 times bigger than it takes up it takes up 60% of the cover, I'd say. It says #1 New York Times bestseller, Robert Ludlum. Then it has a picture of a shell, which I think was like something like the Nautilus. I don't know. It somehow symbolizes Jason Bourne. Then the Capitol Dome, and then a railroad tie or railroad spike. And none of that rings a bell about the book. So this would be one I should reread. But yeah, so let's see. Any other stuff that we need to know about this book? I mean, mostly it's about the thing. I know it's nothing like the movie. So I guess, yeah, I don't really remember anything about it. So that doesn't really do us any good for much other than that was the first book I read. I really enjoyed it. I really liked the ending. It was like a real big set piece, which, again, wouldn't make sense in a movie. Maybe they redid it another way. I don't know. Like, because I really don't remember much about the movies either, other than they, like, used technology and like, they were really thrilling. It just, my brain doesn't remember them. I'm surprised it came out in 2007 was the last Bourne movie. But so that would have been either the first or the second or the third book I read. This other book was another sequel, it looks like, that I would have read. It came out around the same time. This was 1992. And this one, maybe this was the first or the second one, because this was like a comedic thriller, The Road to Omaha. And it was a sequel to maybe this was what got me into it, because that was kind of my thing, was like, at this point I'd already read, Hitchhikers, and I had read some Vonnegut. So I was really like, it's just funny that then like those two things. The next thing I know, I'm reading Ludlum nonstop. But I don't know. So this was a comedic thriller. It sounds a little bit problematic to me. Army lawyer Sam Devereaux, who gets caught up in the schemes of General Mackenzie the Hawk Hawkins. The cover was like of an eagle, and it says A Road to Omaha. It has to do, and the eagle has a Native American headdress on. So that's why I say this seems a little problematic. It's a sequel to the book The Road to Gandolfo. Hawk has discovered a long-forgotten treaty between the U.S. government and a tribe of Native Americans for the state of Omaha, or the land underneath the state of Omaha, which includes a bunch of, it's giving away the plot because I don't remember anything about this, and this is according to Wikipedia, which includes like a couple big air bases. And I guess Hawk tries to bring a suit against the United States to give the land to the tribe. Devereaux, who was retired, is now representing them. And that's about it. Let's see if we have any other information here. It came out in 92. Paperback came out in 93. I think my dad had the hardcover of this book. He might still have it somewhere. And so then I probably would have read Road to Gandolfo next, just because that's kind of how I roll. Now, The Road to Gandolfo was written under a pseudonym, Michael Shepard. And yeah, it was about the Hawkins, and he gets kicked out of the army. Oh, this one I definitely read, because he just goes to like, he's over the top, the Hawk. And the only person that can help him is Sam Devereaux, who gets caught up in his schemes, and it looks like Pope Francis is in the book. This, it says, this is a humorous novel as opposed to just a straight thriller. So that might have been why I liked it. But this one came out all the way. Well, the paperback came out in 82, but I didn't read it until the 90s. I wonder if there's a picture, because I'm going to have to find a picture of that one, because I definitely don't. The one I think by the time I read it, it was a Robert Ludlum book. Yeah, so it looks like there's a bunch of different covers. I do see the cover I read. But yeah, he had a bunch of, obviously he's had a lot of different re-releases. There's even an older one that has like a thriller type one, like a Agatha Christie, that era. I guess that was the 80s, huh? I definitely read it during this Bantam era, I think. And there are used copies. And I'm not going to read this one, though. I'm just going to try to read that, the other one. But yeah, so this one, the cover, this is The Road to Gandolfo. Oh, of course, when I click on it, it brings up another cover. That's not what I wanted. This one, it looks like it says Robert Ludlum up on top. It's red with like concentric circles. It says The Road to Gandolfo. The scintillating, how do you say that? Scintillating national bestseller by the author of the Aquatine Progression. And it shows like a person like the Pope getting on a helicopter, as far as I can see, which isn't that great, you know. So that's interesting. So let's see. I go to Robert Ludlum's author page. He's in he's standing in front of a marsh in a raincoat, which looks familiar. So that must have been on a lot of his books. Yeah, and this doesn't really have any pictures. So let's jump back to his page here. So that's The Road to Gandolfo. Probably, but these sound like books I would have enjoyed, particularly with like the streak I'd been on, because in high school, that's when I discovered Kurt Vonnegut and Douglas Adams, which was strange, but those were what I was reading during the school year for pleasure. This was in the summer. These were like my summer reads. And of course, we don't judge people's summer reads. So then after that, I guess I probably would have gone through the other two Bourne books next, which would have made sense. So would I have jumped back to Bourne #1? I guess so, which is the Bourne Identity. And so I would have read this in the 90s at some point, but it came out in 1980. A spy, so this is full on, what do you call it? And I think the Bourne movies were a little bit, I mean, they were set in the whatever aughts, right? But it was a spy thriller with Jason Bourne, a man with remarkable abilities, and everyone's trying to catch him. You got to catch him, just like Pokemon, you know, just like Pikachu feels. You got to catch them all, or Pokemon, whatever those, you know. Jason Bourne was the original Pokemon. He said, but it was all got to catch him instead of got to catch him instead of got to catch them all. The Peter Cannon of Publishers Weekly said the Bourne Identity is one of the best spy novels of all time, and with up there with the Lucara, his spy who came in from the cold. It was a television movie of the same name with Richard Chamberlain and Jacqueline Smith, and then a 2002 Matt Damon film. Let's see. So a preface of, there is a real Carlos the Jackal, I guess. So I'm just trying to figure out too much without ruining the point, not reading the plot. I don't remember anything about the plot. Let's see. The name Bourne. I don't want to look that up because I don't want to, I'm not super worried about spoiling it, but it's interesting. It was a 1988 television movie and a 2002 film. That was only loosely based on the central premise. And I'm trying to find the cover. And now we'll try to find the cover of the book, because the one on Wikipedia is definitely not the one I read. So definitely from being a librarian, remember the two more modern versions of the book, or actually three. I definitely read it in this, again, the Bantam era. I think that's the name of it, because this is definitely the one I read. It was red. It says it's the same as the other Bourne books that I read. It has a big Robert Ludlum, the Bourne Identity, then a shell with the railroad tie, and maybe a person's. I don't know if that's a person. I mean, isn't it always they're trying to find, like, their child or the lost love? How come, here's the thing that a mother might say, or a grandma, how come they're not trying to, how come Jason Bourne's not trying to get home and find his mother? And to check on her, she's been wondering where he is. He hasn't called in 25 years and, or whatever, 40 years. And she'd like to know that he's doing good. The Bourne caller ID or something, like, call your mother already. What are you searching for your lover for when you could find your mom? And, just come in and check in already. Or, I know, I'm a dad. Okay, plays, what about his sister or his best friend or his dad? Oh, plays ball with his dad. Okay. But I think his mother would be the most, likely. They just get the most like, say, hey, already call your mother. Then there was a Bourne Supremacy. The book came out in 96. Again, I don't think I read this till the 90s at some point. Yeah, let's see. So some of this, I just saw Treadstone, which I know is one of the things from the movie. It's the second Jason Bourne novel, a sequel to Bourne Identity, precedes, of course, the Bourne Ultimatum. Gave its name to the second film. It was completely different plot, though, so that's good news for anybody that doesn't like spoilers. So I don't want to do any, spoiling here either. 597 pages in the first edition. Starts in Maine. A lot of plot, a lot of splot on Wikipedia. That's all it is. Let's look it up, though. Let's take a look at the cover. That's what I'm interested in. Are we right or are we right? Here we go. So it's coming up here. Good old images. Image search is good for this stuff. Okay, I'm not seeing one I recognize reading the book. So at this point, I was probably on my own to find these books, which would go to the bookstore. Or maybe it's this one here. That's strange. Like, usually, I don't remember much, but, since I'm a visual, oh, here we go. I found it. Oh, no, that's a Bourne Ultimatum. I'm looking for the Supremacy, dudes. Oh, here it is. I found it. Something. It's a kind of a blue and a neon hot pink. And it says a Bourne Supremacy. And it has the shell with the railroad thing. And I can't really see in this picture what it is. There was an earlier edition, or the original edition, which had a more stylized cover with maybe a picture of Jason Bourne and then what looks like a painting of a woman's head. Yeah, and then I guess I wonder if Matt Damon's on the cover, is it the original Jason? I mean, I'd be disappointed if I saw the movie. I'm just being honest. And then I went and the book was nothing like it. I mean, some people could be surprised. Oh, another thing I forgot is that one thing I was impressed with, just because I'm who I am, is that almost all the books started with the, except for one book from 1973. Which is Travaine or something. I don't even know how to pronounce it, which I think was made into a movie. So let's see if I could go through these and think about which ones I've read. The first book was the Scarlatti Inheritance. I probably did read that just because I probably did at some point say, let's just go through these in order. Or it was like one way to say, to like set myself at the bookstore. Because this was back in the 90s. You had to go to the bookstore to buy books. And I think with someone like Ludlum, and it looks like they had done a reprint right around the time I discovered it, was probably pretty easy. So Scarlatti Inheritance, probably. What was it about? Probably some kind of heiress. I I don't know, or some sort of, I don't know, maybe we'll look into it. Osterman Weekend, probably. That was a movie, though, that I've never seen. The Matlock Paper, definitely. Travaine, I don't remember. Cry of the Halidon, maybe. The Rhineman Exchange, maybe. That one is not a very, I mean, a couple of these you say, okay, Matlock Paper, that's good. Scarlatti Inheritance, I don't know why I like that name, but I'd say, yeah. Osterman Weekend, I'd say, well, Matlock Paper, that's, even without Matlock, because you'd say, okay, Cry of the Halidon, I don't know, there's something in there that's not, and same with Rhineman Exchange. Road to Gandolfo, Gemini Contenders. Now, that's a good, I don't even know, I definitely read that. That's probably about twins that are up to no good. I read that. These ones I definitely read. Chancellor Manuscript, the Holocroft Covenant, Maltese Circle, because that almost sounds like the Maltese Falcon. Those are all good. I definitely read those. Parsifal Mosaic, I don't even know. That one's hard, but I probably read that. Aquatine, these are hard to say, too. Aquatine, Progression, maybe. Then Bourne Supremacy. Icarus Agenda, definitely read that, probably just because I like Icarus. Bourne Ultimatum, read that. Road to Omaha, read that. Scorpio Illusion, probably. Yeah, that's a great title. Scorpio Illusion. You say, yeah, I was born in a totally different month. It was totally an illusion. Apocalypse Watch, probably. Maltese Countdown. Now we're in the late 90s, so probably I didn't read any of these after this. Hades Factor, Prometheus Deception, Cassandra Compact, and Sigma Protocol, Paris Option, Janssen Directive. Tristan Betrayal, the Altman Code. So I definitely didn't read any of those. Prometheus Deception would seem like something I've read, or Hades Factor. But I don't think I read any of these after 9. Maybe Apocalypse Watch might have been the last one. But I'm not even sure about that one. So let's look at that. Let's just look at a couple more. Oh, it's a TV movie. That's why, probably. Virginia Madsen and Patrick Bergen. It's the second of people that are up to no good. Drew Latham. This was, I think maybe I did read these, or maybe I did see the movie, because, let's see the first book. The Holocroft Covenant was in 78. Oh boy, it seems like it's pretty, like, yeah, this one is, so this one's, just tough stuff he covers in this stuff. Holy cow. Of course, with these titles, so some of them are like, okay, let's see a Scorpio Illusion, because they said that's a pretty good one. Suspense, drama, action, and thriller. Tyrell Hawthorne, Naval Intelligence Officer, one of the best. Called out of retirement. So, yeah, this is, I guess, where you start to see where I'm like, okay, what is it like? They keep calling people out of retirement. It says this novel consciously draws on Freudian theory to add depth to the dominant characters. A factual error in the novel. So not too much on there. Came out in 93. Probably read this one, but not on the cover they have there. Let's see, Icarus Agenda. That'd be another one. Probably not going to read any of these. This one looks interesting, though. The cover is not one I read, the first edition. It shows a White House with, like, either, like, lightning bolts coming out from it. Let's see, Evan Kendrick, congressperson from Western Colorado. Friends with the Sultan of Oman. Somebody goes undercover. Well-known architect. So, it sounds, I don't know. Should I read the Bourne? What was I going to read? The Bourne Supremacy, right? Let's see what this Parsifal. Yeah, I think that's how you say it. Mosaic. Michael Havelock, counselor ops, love of his life. I definitely read this one. KGB. This one's a spy novel, the whole 9 yards. Came out in 1982. I read it in the 90s, but so you could kind of see there's usually one main character, torn loyalties, family thing, and then let's check the Maltese Circle. Probably read this one. Anthony Blackburn. His separate people go to the big farm, and then Brandon Schofield, he has to team up with Vasily Tolinkinov, which they never got along, and now they have to work together. So I like that idea. Some in Washington and forced into retirement instead. So this might also have, definitely like spies, mafia. So these are a bit like those, like Pulp Fiction. Those books, that style of book, like actual thriller novels, like the ones that are a bit like Westerns. Let's finish up with the Gemini Contenders. This came out in 1976. Italian Alps, mysterious cargo, and a secret brotherhood of priests trying to locate the cargo. Okay, so this sounds like, Gemini Contenders, where's the Geminis? Immensely wealthy family, secret order, and a bunch of other stuff. Brother versus brother. Here we go. So I guess it's like each brother's searching for it. One's good, one's not good. So it's, remember that was that in the 90s or the aughts when that, were those books that came out that were really popular that Tom Hanks was in the movies about? I guess the Ludlum was my version of that, but he had more books for me to go through. What was those called? I have no idea. I almost thought of it. Da Vinci Code. Yeah, those books. Right. But those ones were more, everybody was like, the Da Vinci Code came out, super popular, and it had super tangential discussions about it. And then the next couple books came out too. So anyway, I don't know, this is interesting. A little interesting stroll through some of my, not childhood reading. I guess it was in my 20s. There's some reading I did as young. Well, yeah, it was even though I was like whatever age I was still a tween. Thanks, good night. All right, I want to thank everybody that recently reviewed the show on Apple Podcasts, Beanwell XO. So Beanwell, hug and kiss from the UK. I adore this podcast. Best thing to help me sleep. Really soothing. Helps alleviate a lot of the stuff when I'm sleeping without my partner. Always used to fall asleep to the TV. This is better and more soothing. Thank you very much for making this podcast. Bart is 1774, so the historical Bart works like a charm. My fiance and I listened to this while going to bed, and after only a couple nights, we're falling asleep faster than ever. Orangino Scootershire from the U.S. It says, fell asleep before I could write a review. 5 stars. This one is from Updates Are a Piece of Growth. ZZZZ's best. Scoots on nights when I need to slow my brain down. Always calm my neurons in less than 45 minutes. Husband said, who is this, you dude? And used to make fun of the rambling. Then one night at 4 a.m., he was tossing and turning and fell asleep to it. Love the Count Chocula episode, GOT episodes, and Ray episode on Universal Pools. Enjoy all the guests and other podcasts, other guests. Thanks, Scooter. Keep up the good work. Aubrey says, fantastic. Struggle with having to sit with my thoughts. Having someone to distract me helps. Advertising portion of the show is not obtrusive in any way. It really just blends in with the rest of the podcast. Thanks, Scoots. And this podcast is a joy. Thank you. Foster 501. I don't know if you're a button fly, Foster. Hardy har har. Isn't that the Levi's 501? Are those the button fly jeans? Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Rarely make it past intro. Made my nights to sleep since finding this podcast. Amazing. Thank you. Miss Grisius. Miss Grisius, that makes sense. That rhymes. It surprisingly worked the first time I listened. Doesn't work every time, but it sure does help. Perfect for me, as I need to be caring, as I need to care enough about, take my mind off of stuff, but not too much that I'm invested in stay up and listening. E-Hawk 1. I don't think this is Ethan Hawke. Maybe this is like Eleanor Hawke, or Evangeline Hawke, Edgar Hawke, Alan Hawke. It's a yes from me. I have trouble falling asleep. Helps me sleep every time. Scooter's awesome. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't stop. Here's someone. When I see this one, I wonder if they're related to Sonic, even though it says Hedgie 2000 with an IE. I don't know why my brain would say, I wonder if that person knows Sonic the Hedgehog. Oh, I guess because Hedgie would be like a pet name for like if you were dating a hedgehog named, I guess if you're dating someone named a Hedgehog, you'd say, my little Hedgie, come over here. Give me a little, do they have quills? I never know that. Anyway, Hedgie 2000 says, I don't know, man. 5 stars. I have no idea, but it works every time. And then a sandwich, a jellyfish witch says it's magic. I deal with chronic insomnia, medication to sleep, and I still have trouble with ADHD. First time I listened, fell asleep in 35 minutes. Second time, I have no idea because I was asleep and woke up 8 hours later. Scooter's still talking. Incredible. I don't have a chance, to let my thoughts build up. About not getting enough sleep. Scooter's voice is soothing. I don't even have to listen to the words, just the sound of it. Recommending it to everyone. Thanks, Jelly. And, all your Jelly, if I was in the UK and I used that slang properly, which I don't know if I did. But thank you so much for the support. Sleep With Me exists as a free podcast because people that support the show directly via sponsors, Patreon, merch, live shows. That's what enables us to keep the show free and not behind a paywall. And what else? So, people spreading the word is a huge way to keep the show. It just helps people find out about the show or podcasts in general. Speaking of which, I want to let you know about a podcast right now.